The most difficult time you had?
I guess the death of my wife.
You married
Recently.
Marty at
I think-
18 and 21.
Yes, exactly. And
And-
we had 72 years.
72 years.
And we both moved in here, and then not too long after that, she developed cancer, and then she died in our health center here after getting very, very excellent care, you know.
That was, what, 4 years ago?
No, about 6 years ago.
6 years
I knew
ago.
each other since we were 10 years. I was part of her family were part of the church, so at age 18 we wanted to get married, but the boys were not. The girls could marry without their mother's permission at 18, but the boys had to be 21. So we waited till I was age 21 and 2 weeks, and then we married.
So how did you get into the drapery business?
I was at City of Paris. This is my first job now. When 1934, when I graduated from high school, the height of the Depression, nothing available any place. A lady from the church, was also in charge of part of City of Paris, and she hired me and put me to work there. So my job was to go around from the wrapping desks, and I'd use just a laundry cart, take the packages down to the room. In those days, the department stores mailed or delivered packages that you didn't have to take them home on the bus. And so consequently, I was doing that from playroom. Then after that, I got a job in the elevators, and I was running the elevator. I was operating an elevator, and in those days we had to open the door of the elevator by hand, and the one thing I remember was a lady outside, "Are you going up?" "Yes, madam, we're going up." "Well, I'm going down." And so that was that sort of thing that happened too. But anyway, then from there, there was a vacancy in the drapery department, and this is where I start bragging a little bit. The vacancy, so I was a stock boy, and my job was to put the bolts away, or at least to tell the salespeople where they were, and that kind of thing. And then when I wasn't busy, then I would help a customer. And after several years, they started publishing how much each of the 17 salespeople had sold, and I was keeping track. And this is the truth, I had sold more than any salesperson, even though I was just the stock boy. So I went up to the office and they said, "Mr. George, that's not possible." And I said, "Will you check the accountant, please?" And they looked at it and said, "You start as a salesman on Monday." So that's the way I became a salesman. So I'm kind of proud of that.
Tell me about the City of Paris.
City of Paris was wonderful. It was a family-owned, people that came from France, and so the ceiling was very special, but it was copied after the Galerie Lafayette in Paris. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful store, family-owned store. At Christmas, well, at Thanksgiving, we were invited, after the Thanksgiving evening, we were invited to come down to the store and help to decorate the floor-to-ceiling Christmas tree that was in the lobby there. If we didn't show up, we might not show up on Saturday because we no longer had a job. But anyway, then we decorated that. So it was a very individually owned store. And one of the lovely things that happened was that when I went into business for myself, after being there many, many, many years, the owner, Mr. Verdier, came down and told the salespeople, "If anyone asks for Mr. George, you have my permission to say he's going in business for himself." So that was just a lovely, lovely, lovely compliment.
Wow.
Yeah, wow was right. So anyway, it was that kind of, City of Paris was that kind of a store, very well known, right at the corner of Division General and Stockton, and right across from Macy's, and not too far from the White House, this sort of thing. But beautifully. And
Is it Arrow in Stockton or?
No. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Gary and Stockton, yeah, downtown.
so that's right on Union Square,
That's
basically.
just opposite. In fact, that was one of the pleasures working there. I could go up on the roof. I could watch them digging down and making the garage, underground
Union
garage,
Square.
which is now Union Square.
Right.
Yeah, we saw that happen, shovelful by shovelful.
Is that the Neiman Marcus site, or is
Yes,
that
it
the?
is. That's where Neiman
That's what I
Marcus
thought it
bought them
was.
out. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Neiman Marcus bought them out. Yeah, so it's a wonderful. But anyway, just very nice people there, and it worked out well for me. I remember my wife going out after we talked it over and coming back with an engagement ring that the jeweler had trusted her with, and showing it to me when I was operating the elevator. And so we decided that was the one that we wanted, yes. And we prayed for children, and then when we found out how to do it, we had 3 and 4 years, 3 daughters. When we were age 21, and shortly the children came along, we hired my mother away from the hospital. We paid her the same salary. My wife and I paid her the same salary, and she raised the 3 girls so that we could be in the store day and night as we had to be. And so got acquainted. And we're very fortunate in that the girls now in their 70s love each other no matter where they live in the world. They communicate with each other. Also, we had the war come along, and however, we were married by then. We were married in 38, I think it was. But we during the war years, then I was to be drafted, but I wasn't the tallest man that they had in front of them, and so they said get into defense work, and so I lucked out in going to Western Pipe and Steel down in South San Francisco, and there they were building ships, troop ships, and so I got a job then as a marine electrician. They trained me as a marine electrician, and so then I was working, pulling the cables and doing whatever had to be done to get lights and communication in the cabins. And then when they finally was time for me to really be drafted, my 3rd daughter had just been born, and they also saw that I was leading a group of quite a few ladies as foreman, and so consequently then I didn't have to go into the Army, but I stayed there and built the ships, and that was an interesting experience too. The thing that happened, we didn't in those days know that asbestos would get into your lungs, but now today I have shortage of breath when I exercise, and so I have some residue from that, but not serious. At least it doesn't really bother me. It's just embarrassing. I have to sit and rest just a little bit. It works fine.
So the way you said that, you basically were a foreman for Rosie the Riveters?
No, for welders.
For welders?
We'd gotten away from the riveter by then, and were welders, and I've had marks on here where the weld had done it. One of my things I remember there was in the night shift, we had a large pole went up the center of the ship, and that's what they used as put the pulleys to, but I had to put the wire, the electric wire up there, and so I had to be standing on one and holding the other one while the welder was working on it, and I had to do it because I had a crew of about 15 people, but the fog was so heavy that they just refused to go up on there, and so when we were up at the very top and she hit the weld, the sparks there, I could see the shadow of the 2 of us on the fog up there, plain as day, and it was that kind of an experience. So working around a shipyard was, well, another thing that did happen, however, the man that was over all of us thought this window dresser was not much good, and how come he's being an electrician. but we had all these wires that had to start at the switchboard, and then they had to go down the hall, and then this wire had to turn off and the others did not, and so forth. So I got the idea of coloring those with colored paper and colored pencil, and it was so much easier to see. And when he saw that, you know, he changed his opinion just a little bit. But we did our job as good, if not better, than others, and that was really something to be proud of. So it worked out fine for the war years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Were you in that position for the entire war, or?
Yes, pretty much so. Yes, yeah, pretty much so. Yeah, and then came back to City of Paris. So then I'd been there, away and back again.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
you know, and they understood why I was away and why that
Well,
sort of.
there were a lot of people away at that point in
Exactly.
time.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Um,
The ladies were the ones too. We only had two or three musicians who were excused from going to war because they were in part of an entertainment situation.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the others were ladies, but they were great to work with because they knew how to follow directions. They called it a recipe, and so they knew how to do it. So we did our share of production, and even though all of us, the ladies and the men, were pulling these heavy cables were thicker than my thumb because they had the wire, electric wire in it, but they were metal on the outsides, and then we had to fasten them to the wall, you see, and we even had to make the strap, we called it, out of metal to hold them in place.
the bracket kind of.
Bracket thing, we had to make that. So it was educational.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did your mom then raise the girls through the war while you were in?
Yes. Yes. That was a wonderful arrangement. They loved each other, all four of them, and they teased her a lot, which was great. And she was at home and didn't have to get up, didn't have to leave home to go down and work and she, in the hospital, she was working and cleaning bedpans and that sort of thing. So this was much the same, but much more pleasant. Yeah. We had a contractor who did the upholstering, and he's the one that told me one day that a man out on West Portal Avenue wanted to sell his drapery business. So on my vacation, I went out for 2 weeks. I worked there without any pay at all, but I found I was working with the same people the ladies that I was meeting down in the City of Paris. So I knew that it was, I'd be able to
It's
handle it.
credible.
Yeah, and then I opened it in '48.
Okay, so 3 years after the war, basically.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and Mr. Sylvanus wanted to get out of the business and go into the chicken raising business down in Ben Lomond. Also, one of my favorite stories is about two men who graduated from university in business, went into business, but not making a go of it. So they sold the business to a man who obviously hadn't had much education, but his store was always crowded. And so they went in and said, "How do you do it?" He says, "Well, I don't know. I work on 4% markup." And they said, "Well, you can't make it on 4% markup." "I do. I buy it for $1, I sell it for $5, and 4%'s all I need." So, so that's sort of what
That's what they call a 4% markup, huh?
Exactly, right. So that's what I tried to do, is work on it. I'd buy these bolts of material. I found soon that San Francisco, the people here wanted something just a little bit more sophisticated than they did down the peninsula. So these mills had these materials they wanted to get rid of, and so I could buy a bolt of fabric, still be competitive with a department store, but I paid a lot less for the fabric, so my profit was more, so that was helpful. So there was sort of things like that you do if you want to stay in business.
Well, they weren't necessarily seconds then. They were more end of line or end of...
End of line. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there had to be materials most of the time that... and I was very fortunate. I was at 199 West Portal Avenue, very busy street, but I'd have nice displays in the window, and then streetcars going by, people would see what I had and come in and all of that. And another favorite story of mine is going up the West Portal with a whole armload of drapery fabrics. And of course, in those days, everybody everybody smoked. Mr. George, have you got a match? I must have one someplace, but I've never met him.
How did you get business? How did you make...
In the drapery business?
In the drapery business.
Oh,
How
I
did you
see.
expand your business?
First off would be the display window. I had a very wide store, 32 feet, and I would have things in the window that I knew the ladies would be interested in as they'd go by on the streetcar, and then they'd come in, that sort of thing. And then also I would just try to be helpful. If people came in and had broken something, and I would try to be sure that and then when I'd be in their home, I would suggest things. Many of the older people, not older people, but people worried about possessions that they had, and we'd be talking about it, and I would suggest that they put a note on the bottom of the piece of furniture, this one belongs to, and then name the person that they had promised it to, that sort of thing. And they would appreciate it and tell their friends what I said, and so that I'd get more business, something like that.
So basically, it was a business by referral. As opposed,
Yes, I think
in the old
so.
day, we'd refer to it as word of mouth, but referral is more intentional, which is
Yeah.
what you did.
Exactly that, yeah, I think so. And also by showing in the window things, whatever that would be, demonstration, I guess, business by demonstration.
So that means I think one thing that may get lost is you actually had terrific traffic in front of that window.
That's right,
That the West Portal line was a very significant line.
exactly, yeah.
And actually, it sounds like that the gentleman that bought your business was able to do the same thing and was on the Taraval line. Is that?
Yeah,
It's not as popular an area
Yes.
because you didn't have every train
well, I
coming
had,
out of the
I
tunnel.
had a large sign though that said, and I don't think he does.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think that he does, of course, have the van, and he would have the truck, and it
Okay.
has the name on it, that sort of thing. Yeah. Our motto was everything for the window. We supply everything for the window except the view.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Fine.
How is it that you and Marty stayed in business for over 52 years and avoided, or did you avoid the pillow board meetings or those kinds of things to keep your personal life and your
Yes.
business
Well,
life
we
separate?
always had 3 employees, so that consequently we had to adjust to that. But I tried in the drapery business to make it a complete business, so I sold everything from curtain rods. I sold the fixtures the customer needed, and then when I sold the fabric, I showed the customer how to put it on the floor and put the drapery together and that sort of thing. And that worked out fine because next time they wanted draperies, they let me make them for them. And then I had 3 employees in my workroom, but I found out that a outside shop could do the job for me without my worrying about whether the salesperson, whether the sewer showed up or not, this sort of thing. And so I started farming it out. So then, and the same with the upholstering. I did some of the dining room chair seats and that sort of simple upholstering, but the more advanced then. But I did always pick up the chair. One of my favorite stories is sequoias here in San Francisco are 24 floors and 3 elevators. And I had 2 club chairs like the ones behind you, and I put them into the one into the elevator and saw on the corner of my eye, saw the door closing. So I waited and waited and waited, and this elevator would come, but not mine, this not mine. Finally, my elevator came with the chair still in there, and the housekeeper who I had met said, Mr. George, I had a phone call saying there's a chair riding up and down by itself in the elevator, and so I thought it might be yours, and so it's kind of thing. So, but anyway, I saved $70, $80 in transporting then, because I had my station wagon, and so I would deliver the furniture. Then I was always on the end of the sofa walking backwards to make sure they didn't scratch the walls, and down 10 flights of stairs if necessary, and did that kind of thing. So that was the part of when the store was going, just trying to make it as economical and profitable as possible. And that's why now I'm so fortunate in that the monthly amount we get from the government just covers my rent here. So that's very nice.
Well,
that sort of thing.
but so how did you and Marty manage to stay married during all of that time between?
She had her apartment and I had mine. See, we worked together in my store. She had her half of the store, which was paying the bills and taking care of the government requirements and that sort of thing. And my job was to bring in the money so she could pay the bills and work with the customers.
Did Marty end up using computers in the business?
No, no, she never did. No, she used a comptometer some, but not the computer. No,
A comptometer?
Which is doing figuring, this sort of thing.
Okay.
She'd had some training in it. I don't think she used it a lot in the business, but it was available, yeah.
So it wasn't the old adding machine.
No, it was a little bit more advanced than that.
Okay.
Yeah. However, I'm not quite sure. I tried to stay out of that part of the business, believe me, and she stayed out of mine.
See each other at work?
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, except to help each other. But to sometime we had to give an approval for some way or another. She had to come up for the money. But in those days it was 210 EOM. So the 10th of the month, if you paid by then, you got 2% discount. And so we were always frugal and tried to take advantage of anything like that. So it worked out all right. There was satisfaction in Sylvanus of coming up with a way that paid the bills, instead of having just a small sample book that people had been buying, a whole wall of drapery. I would own the bolt of fabric and make a profit on the fact that I had it, and also never had to tell a customer that we had run out of it because I owned it. And so then I'd cut drapery lengths, borrow wire coat hangers, and I'd have a whole wall of draperies. And while she and her sister or mother-in-law were talking, then I would be doing my arithmetic. And if I'd hear them say, I don't like that one, then I'd take it down and put up another. So when they knew what they were going to get, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of the fact that they were pleased.
So you had your business until you retired?
Yes. Well, actually, an interesting thing there, I had a grandson who graduated from Kansas State University and came out here to buy my business. And so he and his wife, and she had one baby and expecting another, when her brother came out here and talked him into paragliding out at the Ocean Beach. This is out at Fort Funston, right along the ocean.
Popular spot.
Yeah. So anyway, he was in that, and the wind was coming ashore, and so strong that he couldn't control it, and he ended up being electrocuted in the electric high tension wires out there. So now they've had this business for a year, I guess, when he was killed. So grandfather then has to take it over back again, unretire, and send her and her children back to her family in Kansas. And we had that, so I had that for 2 years after my 50 years of owning it originally, 52 years. But then I found a man who I had trained when he graduated from university many, many years before, and he was working for, he had learned the business through me and then also through other places where he worked. So he took over the business and has had it now for the 17 years and has done very well with it. But anyway, then shortly after that, I came. Oh, and then I had met a lady who was a resident here at the Heritage, and when the man that bought my business upholstered something for her, she was so pleased that she wanted me to see it, and so I came here and saw it and signed up to live here the next day, and so now that's 52 years then. In the business, and then I came here. Yeah. So, interesting, a busy life.
Yeah, I would say so.